Welcome back, everybody, to the Sugarcane Rush channel. Glad to have you. We're really happy about all your new subscribers and all the comments you've been sending in. Keep it coming. Today we're going to take a look at something that I've had a lot of questions about, and I've had some friends that are using the board as a PA, and they're interested in the functions of the scene as well as a fader mode. So we're going to try to look at the settings in detail, and I'm going to try to explain what these functions are and how to use them, and at least I'll show you how I use them all the time, and then you guys can adapt and use them yourself. So let's get started. We've got fader mode and we've got scenes. All right, the fader mode are basically memory locations, just like scenes. They're memory locations where you can store some of the settings from your board. Okay, and in the fader mode, you store the balance of the faders in different sections, and so you can have a mix for your master mix, which would be the mix for the sound that's going out to your audience, and then you can have separate mixes like a mix A, which can be used with these two as outputs, where you can plug in your monitors and you can have a separate mix for your monitor coming out of the left and right A. All right, but there's more. You've got B, C, D, and E, and that corresponds to your headphones. If you notice your headphones, you have A, B, C, D, E. You can have separate mixes, headphone mixes, for your musicians all the way to F to E. All right, so the fader mode saves the balance from your faders into each one of these memory locations and stores them. Okay, and then you can go back and forth and have different mixes for different musicians or for your monitors, and you can change them independently of your master mix. So that in a nutshell, that's the fader mode, and we're going to look at it in detail in a minute. The scenes are a little different. Scenes will store more information. It will store the same thing we were talking about, the levels of your faders, but it will also store in each individual channel, it will store your effects, your EQ, type of effect, and tone. You can actually set up your board and save it, all these settings, save it to one of these memory locations. You got 9 of them. And then once it's saved, you can move everything around and do whatever you want. And later on, if you want to recall all your settings again, you just press recall, press the button that you saved it in, and everything in the board will be changed. Now, what can't be stored in these memory locations? Well, the two main things that can't be stored is the gain button, or the gain balance that you have for each microphone, and also the compressor. It will not store those two things because these are analogs. It also will not store the master volume of your monitors, but it will store the master volume of your board and also of your effects return. So you can save those included. The way I set it, and one way to do it, to take a good look where it'll actually show you both fader mode and scene, the first thing I do is I set up a scene which will reset my board. Because, like, for instance, you can see right now I have the faders up here. If I go to B, I can move some of the faders around. That'll store that location. If I go to C, all my faders are down. I'm going to leave it like that. If I go to A, this fader changed. These are down, but I'm going to change A also. And here's a trick that you need to know. Once you have a stored balance on your faders, a mix, if you want to switch to that mix and then make adjustments to your faders, you need to bring the fader down to where the LED light is, because the LED light tells you where your fader was for that mix. And if you want to go back to it, you need to go put your fader back to where the LED light is. Once the LED light is off, your fader once again becomes active. If you have this setting, for example, and you want to change this channel, the volume, if you put it up, it won't do anything. It will not be affected. Even down here like this, nothing will happen. If you want to change it, you need to bring it down. Once that light goes off, now you can change it, put it wherever you want. And that works with everything. This one, which is a stereo channel, is telling me the fader is up here. Right now, if I move it, it wouldn't affect the sound coming out of this channel. It would have to turn off the LED, then you can change it. So just keep that in mind as part of the way that the board works. So what I do is I want to store, and let's try it right now. Let's get right to work. We're going to store a scene which will reset the whole board. Okay? And so to do that, you first go to master. You bring your faders all the way down. You make sure that you go to where the LED light is. Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. Everything is down. So now there's no lights. All the faders are down. So in master, you have no sound coming out for your monitors because everything is down. Or in this case, the master is the one that goes out to your audience. But now if we go to A, you notice the LEDs changed, okay? What that means is channel 7, for example, the volume in channel 7 is all the way up here to where the LED is. The volume in channel 8 is here. Channel 9 and 10 is down. 11 and 12 is up here. If you want to affect the volume, if I want to reset all these faders, I need to first go to where the LED is, turn it off, bring it down. 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 Now my A mix is all down to nothing. And that's what I want. I'm going to reset the board, so I want everything to 0 or nothing. B, I've got a couple of different mixes in B. So I want to bring those down. Go match it, bring it down, match it, bring it down, match it, bring it down. Everything is the same. C, they're all leveled down. D, they're all leveled down because I did this before. And E, they're all leveled down. Okay, now I have all of my mixes in the fader mode from the master all the way down to E. They're all the way down to the bottom, which means there's no volume going through these faders. So now we're set, but we need to do one more step. We need to go channel by channel, select, and then go into your EQing, because this is the other thing that scenes will store, is your settings for EQ, settings for effect, type of effect, this kind of thing. It gets stored into your scene. And if you want to reset the board, you want to make sure that each channel is to 0. And I have most of them already down to 0. I might have a couple here that this one has a little setting. So what I would do is I would bring the effect send all the way down. I bring the EQ all the way to 0. I bring this EQ all the way to 0. And this EQ all the way to 0. Now everything is set neutral. Bring it here. There's a little change here, so I'm going to bring it back up. Everything is set. All the other ones are set now here. I have the EQ off on this channel because this is a channel that I use to play back from my computer, and I don't want any EQing on my monitor of the music that comes from my computer. So the EQ is off. I'm going to leave that there, and this is set. So now we have all of the faders to nothing. We have every channel set to basically flat on the EQ. No effects going out, pan right in the center, okay? And everything stays the same. The same here, the effect return stays there, the master stays there. I have them both on 0, okay? Now, what are we gonna do? We're gonna save all those settings to my scene number 1. And it's very simple to do. Basically, you have 2 buttons here. You have to make sure that your scene is on. You have 2 buttons, save and recall. All right. So in this case, we want to save. You press save, and you'll see that the buttons, they all turn red. There's a couple that are blinking. What happens? The ones that are solid are memory locations that I have information already stored. The ones that are blinking are basically blank, and you can store information to it. Now, you can also store information over the ones that already have information in there. You can overwrite that information, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in scene number 1, I'm going to put where my board is right now, which is basically flat with all the volumes down and everything set. All right, so we're under save. We hit 1, and that's it. It's saved. Now, we can take the scenes off. Now I'm going to mess around with the board. I'm going to have the master. I'm going to mess around with the levels. I'm going to get here on channel 6 and mess around with the EQ, bringing some over here, some up there, some effects send. The same thing for channel 7. Some EQ there, some EQ here. The panning. Just mess around with the settings, and I have the levels here. If I go to A, it's going to tell me that everything is down because that's how we stored it. So let's mess around with A also. A would be your monitor mix. I'm going to put this very loud. This one over here, this one over there, this one over here. So, and just as a reminder, the settings that you have on the EQ and on the effects cannot change from fader modes A to B to C. Once you set it, the settings you have on the EQ and effects will apply to all the channels, to all the mix. So you can't have separate mixes with separate EQs or effects. So we messed around with this, messed around a little bit with the EQ. So now I say, well, you know what? I want to reset the board again. So what I do is I recall, press the scene on and recall. Now, the ones that are blinking are the ones where we have information stored. The ones that are off means that there's nothing stored there. So we want to recall the scene number 1, which is the one that resets my board. So let's press number 1, give it a couple of seconds, and if you notice, all the LEDs went down. And if you notice up here, the effects also got 0. So we bring the LEDs, we bring it down, and this is the way that master was set. Now let's see how the mix A was set. As you can see, they're all down here. So basically what happened is we now stored in the scene number 1, we stored a flat setting to your board so that you can start over. So now going into what else we could do with this, we're going to go and say, well, we're going to have a rehearsal today. And so I need to set up the board for my rehearsal. And okay, the way to do it is you reset the board to nothing, so everything is set. And then you start plugging in your microphones, you start plugging in your, whether you have keyboards, guitars, vocals, whatever you're going to have in your rehearsal, you set it up. And then very, very important, there's 2 things that I'm going to recommend that you do at this point. And that is that always use the same microphones in each channel. So you pick the channels, and you know that in this board, if you have condenser mics, you have to have the phantom power on, which is that little red button, and you'll see the red light. Mine is a condenser mic, so I have the phantom power on. But what I recommend is that you always try to use the same microphones in the same inputs. This way you can get your level of your gain so that you get your microphone loud enough so that you get a strong signal, but not too loud so you can overload the preamp and get distortion. So once you set those gain buttons, and if you want to use a compressor, once you set those, set them the same way from the same mic and for the same people. If you have, unless you're doing sound reinforcement for different bands, then all that goes out the window. But if you have your little group that you have, a 4 or 5 piece group, 6 piece group, that you're using this board for a PA in your rehearsal, set up the microphones the way you're going to do it. Set up your gain the way that you're comfortable with and it sounds good. Set up your compressor. And then my suggestion is you label them if you can and take a picture. Okay? Because you don't want anybody messing with these, and then when you try to get the rehearsal going or you try to go to the gig, things will change drastically. So set it up in that way if you can. Set up your gain and then take a picture of it, or jot it down if you have a pad that you want to use. Jot it down for that. The same thing with the scenes. You have 9 of them. You're going to forget what you put in them. So keep a little tab where you know, and scene number 1 is your reset. Scene number 2 is going to be my rehearsal setup. Okay, so this way you won't forget and you won't be getting the wrong things. So let's do it like a fake rehearsal right now. I'm not at a place where we can rehearse, but let's make believe that we got mic 5, 6, and 7 are for vocals. Okay, you got these 3 mics. You got 3 singers, lead vocal, and maybe 2 guitar players that sing. You have a keyboard that goes into 11 and 12, and maybe you want to plug in the bass and another guitar here or some guitars. Whatever you require for your rehearsal, you set it up. Set up your gains. Make sure you label that you're going to have the bass on number 1, the guitar on number 2, the other guitar on number 3. However you want to do it, you set it up. Once you're plugged in, ready to go, you've got your speakers plugged in, and you need powered speakers. And then if you have a nice rehearsal where you need your monitors, you plug in your monitors into the left and right of A, okay? And then we'll start working with the balance. Right now, we're going to be working on master. You set master first, which is going to be coming out of here, going into your speakers. And then you start testing the microphones. Once you have your level there, you start testing how loud or how soft you want your mic for the rehearsal. And maybe you play a little bit and you tweak it. If you have somebody that does the board for you, they can, as you're playing, they can get the right gain and the right volumes. And once you're comfortable and you're set up with what's going outside, you can switch over to A. And then in A is going to be what's coming out of the A for their monitors. You can get a separate mix. If, for example, you have the keyboard going out to the venue or out into the main speakers, but maybe you don't want the keyboards very strong on your monitors, you can lower your keyboard. You might have it in the master. The keyboard maybe is all the way up to here. In your A mix, you bring your keyboard and maybe put it up here. So you get a different level coming for your monitors. You set up your monitors the way you like it. You set up your outside mix the way you like it, right? Once you're comfortable and it's working, then you're going to change that and save it as scene number 2, okay? So we go up here, we click save. In this case, we're going to overwrite scene number 2. So I'm going to press scene number 2. And also remember, you have to have set up your EQ. However your singer or your guitar player wants to EQ it to go out into the venue, You work with your EQ for each microphone. You can do that. Just press and select, tweak your EQ and your effects, and then that will be saved. So once you got your rehearsal set up, okay, and you're happy with the sound, the way it is, you're happy with the way your balance is here, you're going to save the scene for the rehearsal. But I'm going to give you another little tip. Once you save this scene, okay, everything is going to be there, everything is going to be active. So when you come in the next time and you have the speakers plugged in and everything, and you turn the board on and you recall your rehearsal scene, it could create some feedback or some effects if things are a little different. So my suggestion to everyone is, when you're going to save the scene for your rehearsal, bring your master volume down, save it all the way down. So when you recall, everything else will have the perfect volume, but the master, when it first comes on, it won't blow your speakers out. You can then bring up the master to the level you want after you recall your rehearsal scene. And I'll tell you why in a second. So now I'm bringing down the master. I've got everybody set up the way I like it. All my EQs are perfect. Everything is set up. So now I click save, and I'm going to save it on number 2. Okay, so now my rehearsal is set up, is saved as number 2. Okay, and it should be pretty much the way you're going to be playing at a venue. Okay, and remember, you have your microphones and your guitars and your keyboards in the right spots. You have the right setup for your gain button, and then you can use the compressor also if you like. So now we want to rewrite the whole thing and just set it to 0 again. What are we going to do? We're going to recall, and I'm going to recall number 1. And as you see, everything went down. Everything got zeroed out. That's the master. Everything is down on the A. Okay, so you say, oh, what happened to my rehearsal setup? Well, your rehearsal setup is on 2. So if we go and we recall, and we're going to recall 2, everything changed. You see where they are? Now you have your setup for your rehearsal that you had saved is back on track. Once you move the faders to where the LEDs are, you're going to be right where you were before. You just got to remember to bring up your master. But that way, it didn't make a feedback when you first brought it up. If you want to see how your monitors are, you press A, and you see your monitors are going to be different. Okay, so you bring it to where the monitors were, and you set it up the way you like it. Like we had the keyboard down, and all the other, however you like your monitors, you can set it up. So now you have basically 2 scenes saved. You have a setup where you reset the board with number 1, and then you have your rehearsal setup with number 2. So now you go to a gig, and you got your gig coming up, and you set up, and you set up the microphones the same way you set up in the rehearsal. You set up your gain buttons the way that you had set up in the rehearsals. You don't touch them. Then you want to recall your rehearsal setup. Okay, I'm going to reset. I'm going to recall, put them on, recall number 1, get all my levels down, all my EQ set. But then I'm going to recall my my rehearsal settings. So I'm going to recall again, press number 2, and you see that everything goes back to where the rehearsal was. And here the master fader is down, and you bring up your faders to where your rehearsal was. Now you're set up at the very basic to the rehearsal. When you're at the gig, now the gig might be totally different than your room at the rehearsal. You might have a small rehearsal room, you might have a bigger, but maybe at this club you've got a lot of mirrors, you got a lot of glass, you got different things, you got a lot of people. it's going to be different. So you have a starting point, which is your rehearsal, and then you can tweak as you go along. You can tweak, and if it's a very difficult club where you have to set up the speakers a different way, you might get some feedback, etc. You tweak it. You tweak your EQing for each channel, right? And once you have your setup for that venue, for that club, for that party, and you think you're going to be going back to that place again, and you have a good setup, well, now you use your scene to recall or to store on number 3 the settings the way you changed them for the club. And if you had changed all these settings so a certain way, plus you changed the EQ for the club because you had feedback and you wanted to take some of the highs out or whatever, you had to put more effect because the singer wanted more effects. Once you're happy with your setup at the gig, then you put on your scenes again, you save, and now you're going to save it, let's say number 3. So now it's saved to number 3. And if we go and we recall again, and I recall number 2, your rehearsal, you will see that the faders moved. They're up here and here, so you have to change it. So basically, to make it just a recap, the way that the scenes work is that there are memory locations which will store in the scenes, will store your volume, the fader volume, and then you have to understand how the LED works on this board, but it'll store your fader volumes for each one of your fader mode. So it'll store your master, it'll store A, B, C, D, E, plus it'll store all your EQing for each microphone and your effects. So you're able to recall all those settings from any way that you have it. So if you tweak it from different places, if you tweak it from the rehearsal to the gig, if you have a gig that's a much bigger gig and you have to put more speakers and you have to change your EQ, you can always save it. So when you go back to that same gig, you can just recall it real quick and get going. So I think that's it. I think that I just wanted to be brief, but with some detail, explain to what the scenes do for you in the fader mode. And maybe I'll touch real quick that in the fader mode also applies to your monitor out. So you can actually have the headphones, 5 different headphones with 5 different mixes. So you can, if you have in-ear monitors or if you have headphones for your rehearsal, you can do that. And as you know, you have your master volumes for the headphones here. And this little switch here can switch the A, which is going to be your monitors, from master. If it's up, you'll be getting the same thing that goes to your venue is going to come out of left and right A. Or if you press it down, then you're going to get whatever settings on your faders you have under A is going to come out to your monitors. So that little button is important because you can switch between listening to in here or on your headphones. You can listen to the master mix or each individual fader mode mix. All right. So I hope this helps you. Thank you for tuning in again. Thank you for listening to Sugarcane Rush. Remember to go in the channel at Sugarcane Rush and listen to the music that we have there. We record a lot of music. We have playlists. We'd love to have you. Subscribe, send me comments. Let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if I missed something. Also shoot me some comments how you use the scenes. Maybe you come up with something that I haven't even thought about. So stay in touch and we'll have another one coming up soon. All right. Thank you for listening.